Okay, welcome or welcome back to the afternoon session for the second day of our talk conference. I am very happy in many ways to have Daniar Kasenov for the next speaker because he's joining us from Russia, and that means that we are still communicating with Russia. On a much more positive note, let me turn it over. We have imperatives as counterfactual antecedents in Russian. Daniar, please take it away.
Yes. First of all, can you hear me? And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. First of all, I would just like to say thank you for organizing this conference, and I hope that as a Russian citizen, it is not my last communication with community from the linguist community in other countries. But well. Yeah, today I'm talking about imperatives, or more correctly, imperative verbal forms as counterfactual antecedents in Russian. And let's look at the first pair of examples. You can see a regular Russian imperative in example 1a, приди домой, come home, and the imperative verbal form is highlighted in red. And the same verbal form is used in 1b, a counterfactual, приди он вовремя, его бы не наругали, which translates to if he came in time, he would not be scolded. And importantly, there is nothing in the antecedent clause, приди он вовремя, that indicates that we are dealing with first of all, a counterfactual, and second of all, an antecedent, because there is no counterfactual or subjunctive Russian particle be. It is here. And second of all, there is no, for example, conditional marker если, a counterpart of if. And well, before examining the properties of this construction, I would like to distinguish it from other phenomena which may appear similar to it, but are actually not. And first class of phenomena is imperative and declaratives, or more broadly, conditional conjunction, but conditional conjunction is not limited to imperatives, which is the same. Well, appears the same because you also have an imperative clause which acts as an antecedent, as in 2a, come forth, and I will shoot. This can be paraphrased as if you come forth, I will shoot. But important difference between imperative and declaratives and the Russian construction I'm talking about today is that conditional meaning in 2a is largely dependent on the linear order of two clauses, because you cannot say I will shoot and come forth and have this and have the same interpretation as 2a. 2a is not 2a cannot be paraphrased as 2b. While linear order matters for imperative and declaratives, it does not matter for antecedent imperatives in Russian. Sorry. You can see it in 3a and 3b. Приди он вовремя, его бы не наругали. If he came in time, he would not be scolded. And this can be transformed to его бы не наругали, приди он вовремя. He would not be scolded if he came in time, and this means the same thing. And this shows that for this construction, linear order does not play a significant role, and that's why this counterfactual antecedent imperative cannot be reduced to imperatives and declaratives. And another class of phenomena that may appear adjacent to what I'm talking about today, but it is actually not, is various counterfactual imperatives reported in the literature. For example, a Dutch pluperfect construction reported by paper Master 2011, which is interpreted as you should have stayed at home. And as we will see with other similar examples in other languages, these counterfactual imperatives are more similar to true imperatives because they are restricted to second person subject interpretation, and secondly, they are more like a true counterfactual imperative. You have imperative pragmatics as a not as an order here, but as, I don't know, a friendly suggestion. You should have stayed at home, even though it is somewhat shifted in time, which is not the case in counterfactual antecedent imperatives, because they do not have anything to do with orders, permissions, suggestions, and so on. And another similar example is the Spanish construction of the verb haber and a participle. I will not try to read this, but example 5 is interpreted as you should have taken the subway, and various researchers have claimed that this is a counterfactual imperative, in a sense that it is a true imperative that has also been counterfactualized, as you can say. But I should point out that, for example, a paper of Biesma 2010 paper argues that it is a different thing entirely. And another example of such phenomenon is in Syrian Arabic. Which is even more truer as an imperative, because it involves an imperative verbal form here, but it is also combined with an auxiliary in perfect, which, when combined, results in another counterfactual imperative, as in you should have eaten, and it is my suggestion, even though I know that you haven't already eaten. And the thing with all of these examples is that they are restricted to second subject, which I think shows that they behave more like a quote-unquote true imperative, unlike the counterfactual antecedent imperative construction, because we have already seen, let me wind back here, because we have already seen that it allows a third person subject, the on voting, if he came in time, not you. Even more, some Russian researchers claim that a second person subject sounds kind of odd in examples like 3a. So it is that this counterfactual antecedent imperative, this imperative as a counterfactual antecedent construction, does not behave like these similar on the surface phenomena, imperative and declarative, and counterfactual imperative in other languages. So what am I going to say, claim about this construction? It is that, it is that morphology is misleading us here. Morphosyntactic evidence shows that the imperative verbal form, counterfactual antecedents, is definitely not a proper imperative. There are too much distributional differences between them. So I suggest that this is due to a certain functional layer being absent from antecedent imperatives, which is present in canonical imperatives. as, I don't know, is a syntactic precursor of imperative operator or something like that. And what's left semantically allows using these imperative verbal forms in counterfactual antecedents, and what's left allows for itself to be spelled out as an imperative form morphologically, while it is definitely not a true imperative, like as in приди домой, come home. It is a different kind of creature, and I think the main point of my talk today is that do not trust morphology at all, especially in Russian. So let's overview these properties of counterfactual imperatives. As we have already seen, there is no second person subject restriction. You can say 7b, приди он вовремя, его бы не наругали. If he came in time, he would not be scolded. While you cannot say приди он домой, as in, well, he come home or something like that, as a Joseph of sorts. You cannot, it is ungrammatical in Russian. The same thing is observed with with a first person subject. You can say приди я вовремя, меня бы не наругали. If I came in time, I would not be scolded. While приди я домой, something like, I don't know, an exaudative of sorts, is ungrammatical in Russian. The string приди я домой cannot be interpreted by Russian speakers in any meaningful way. Another property is, is that counterfactual antecedent imperative cannot be combined with a special imperative particle ka. I will not try to give its full semantic analysis of this particle, but it conveys something resembling a spontaneous decision. Приди-ка домой, come home. Oh, I have just thought it. I think you should come home, or something like that. Приди-ка домой, come home with this particle ka is fine in Russian, but приди-ка он вовремя, его бы не наругали. If he came in time, he would not be scolded with this special particle ka in antecedent imperative. It is ungrammatical. You cannot utter this in Russian, and you cannot interpret this as a Russian speaker as anything meaningful at all. Another property is this, that there is no interaction between aspect and negation for counterfactual imperatives. If you have an imperfective verb, it is all right to have negation with it in a regular imperative, as in 10a. Не уходи домой, don't go home. It is easily combined both in regular imperative не уходи домой and in antecedent imperative не уходи он вовремя, его бы ругали. If he didn't go home in time all the time, he would not, he would be scolded. While this is okay with imperatives of imperfective verbs, it is bad with perfective verbs, as for the verb приди, as we have прийти, which has the imperative form приди, as we have already seen this form. You cannot say не приди домой, as don't come home in Russian, while this ban is lifted in these antecedent imperatives. Не приди он вовремя, его бы наругали is perfectly fine. If he didn't come in time, he would be scolded. Another important property, I think probably one of the important one, is that there is no plural agreement in antecedent imperative. If you want to say come home to you say придите домой, where te is Russian second person plural agreement morpheme. Using plural imperative form in antecedent is ungrammatical. You cannot say «Придите вы вовремя, вас бы не наругали». If you came in time, you would not be scolded. You can say «Приди вы вовремя, вас бы не наругали». If you came in time, you would not be scolded. But adding te to it leads to unacceptability. And this is important because there are contexts where these second person plural agreement morpheme te in Russian appears as a sort of allocative agreement, as a true marker of properties of addressee, as can be seen in 13a and 13b Russian exhortatives. Пойдем домой, let's go home. It is fine when uttered to a single person, when to John only, for example, but it is rather bad when uttered to John and Mary, Pete, and other people. And if you want to say, let's go home to multiple people, you say пойдемте домой, where this let's go home, where this second person plural morpheme te, as which we have seen on the previous slide, acts as something that tells us information about the addressee. And the conclusion we can draw from unacceptability of plural agreement in Russian antecedent imperatives is that there is no syntactic layer that links this imperative verbal form to an addressee, that and you can argue that the lack of plural agreement, this te, which can be act as a addressee agreement, it results from the same it has the same reason as the absence of subject restriction. Well, you cannot have te here for the exact same reason why you can have on the third person pronoun as the subject of these clauses. So morphosyntactic evidence, I think, shows that there are a lot of differences between these antecedent imperatives and true regular Russian imperatives. For example, there are no addressee-oriented properties. And combined with the fact that the use of imperative in a antecedent of a counterfactual is already looks weird because of many semantic and pragmatic properties of imperatives, which are absent in these counterfactual antecedent imperatives, you can draw the conclusion from it that this may indicate the lack of a certain imperative special functional layer, which is included to imperatives. And well, possible culprits would be something like a syntactic precursor of an imperative operator, like imp, la la la, or something, or a special functional projection which restricts the interpretation of the subject to the addressee as the Joseph head of partner or a speech act projection of ISAC 2015 and so on. But an important question would be then, if this imperative special layer is absent here, what is left? What stands behind the imperative verbal form as seen in these counterfactual antecedents? I think there can be two possibilities. The first one would be if you are committed to a modal analysis of imperatives, you can say that, well, we do not have addressee-oriented properties anymore, but we still have a covert modal. Another possible alternative would be that once we strip this imperative functional layer away, which I have mentioned, we are left with some minimal semantics, something as simple as, I don't know, a simple property. For example, for examples like, well, yeah, for examples like 11b, не определен вовремя, it would, without conditionals, it would mean something like a simple property of worlds, for example, a world where he comes in time. And well, even though the option in one is sort of a straw man, because, well, if we examine one, we do not have the meaning that we observe. We'd have something like a modal in antecedent from which the consequent follows, but it is not the case. Example 15, in 15, придем вовремя, его бы не наругали, if he came in time, he would not be scolded, is not interpreted as something like, if he had to come in time, he would not be scolded. We definitely do not have a covert modal there. Covert model there, so we have to stick to some minimal semantics, something resembling a simple property, as, for example, argued for by Portner. For Portner, open the window. The true imperative says that, well, it has two arguments, world and an individual, and it says that this individual may only be an addressee, and this individual X opens the window in the world W. And suppose that we strip that functional layer that I was and still am talking about from that. For example, the whatever encodes this addressee restriction. We're left with well, a pretty bare clause. Придем вовремя. He came in time. The antecedent in the example I'm using in this talk. We have lambda w. Lambda it takes a world as an argument, and it says that he, whoever he is, comes in time in this world. And obviously, the denotation here is easily composed with a conditional operator as its antecedent, because it is effectively a proposition. It is a function of type from S to T. It takes the world and returns a truth value. But even though I think this is a reasonable way to approach this counterfactual antecedent imperative construction, it does not answer a pretty important question. Why can Russian imperative verbal form be used as antecedent only in counterfactuals only? Why can't we have something like if he comes in time, he won't be scolded, with an imperative in the antecedent? And well, many researchers have posited something like a subjunctive feature or an irrealist feature on imperative form themselves, wherever in the syntax. So, for example, hand thousand and I'm sorry, and I'm apologizing for mispronouncing some names. Or Economo 2016. Those researchers have argued that that imperative doesn't only consist of some imperative operator, a modal maybe, but it also has a subjunctive or irrealist feature which explains some distributional phenomena that make imperatives close to subjunctives, root infinitives, and so on. And it appears that here it is also the case in order to explain why this antecedent imperative thing is only observed in counterfactuals. We can explain this by saying that this bare stripped imperative form we have observed is also somehow marked with a subjunctive feature, which allows it syntactically to combine with, and syntactically and semantically, which restricts its distribution to contexts which allow for subjunctives. And one of those is obviously an antecedent of a counterfactual, because, where is, yes, have as in 16a and 16b, when we observe regular counterfactuals in Russian, we see a subjunctive particle b, but in antecedents. Если бы он пришел вовремя, его не наругали бы. If he came in time, he would not be scolded. So it appears that for imperatives themselves, for true imperatives, we need independently an imperative operator, modal or not, which is what is absent from these counterfactual antecedent imperatives, and a functional layer which introduces this subjunctiveness, which is on the other hand present in counterfactual antecedent imperatives, which generates the distribution we observe, namely that if it does have that simple semantics we have posited, which explains why it is only observed with counterfactuals. And an example of such a structure for imperative is given in a dissertation of Oikonomou 2016, where we have independently, separately, an imperative operator, and, well, a mood projection, or it can be mod projection, whatever, which crucially has this subjunctive feature. So when we strip the imperative, as I have argued, I'm repeating myself again, that this counterfactual antecedent imperative is a stripped imperative, we cut away the imperative operator, and we are left with a mood p that is subjunctive, and which looks morphologically as the imperative form, even though having nothing to do with the true imperative itself. And if this let me repeat myself again. If the stripped imperative is a mood p with a subjunctive feature, it may explain why it is only allowed in a counterfactual, because syntactically the stripped imperative would act the same as бы он пришел вовремя in 16a. Yes, if we take the conditional marker если away, we are left with a subjunctive constituent. For example, он пришел бы вовремя, he came in time, which can be substituted by this bare infinitive form. The same thing with conditional inversion in Russian, and it is an even better example, because in conditional inversion we have a morphologically null, a phonologically silent conditional marker, which is combined with a subjunctive constituent on the syntactic level, which results in a counterfactual interpretation. Пришел бы он вовремя, его не наругали бы. If he came in time, he would not be scolded. Under the along the lines I am arguing for here, it is only natural to suggest that the пришел бы он вовремя, he came in time, can be substituted by an imperative, a stripped imperative clause, приди он вовремя. So in regular counterfactual, you have a consequent clause, a consequent proposition. You have the conditional operator if, and you have a mood p as its antecedent, which is also semantically a proposition function from S to T, which crucially is marked with a subjunctive feature, which is, as for example, Oikonomo argues, licensed in these so-called subjunctive contexts. And a subjunctive context we are talking about today is the counterfactual. And in antecedent counterfactual, an imperative counterfactual, we have roughly the same thing, with the only difference that here we have two somewhat finite clause, like пришел бы он вовремя, he came in time, which has, for example, person agreement and so on. Number agreement, sorry. While in an imperative counterfactual, we have the same thing, but imperative. This stripped imperative clause, which for the purposes of the conditional operator is exactly the same thing as the regular antecedent mood p, as in here. And semantically, we appear to have a somewhat because semantically we can say that for the structure here, we can conclude that the stripped imperative behaves just like the antecedent of a counterfactual without the conditional complementizer, for example. And that is exactly what makes the antecedent imperative construction possible. And what's interesting about this conclusion is that, and I will repeat that while concluding, that it appears that we have somewhat, I don't know, detonated a very curious situation where it looked like a proper imperative was used as an antecedent of a counterfactual that is really weird, that is really strange, but it appears that for syntactic reasons, we need to strip some of imperativeness away, and when we do so, we are left with a simple proposition, as, for example, Economo argues that this mood p, which is marked by subjunctive feature of this mood p of imperatives and well other root subjunctive phenomena, is semantically behaves just like a proposition, and that leads us to believe that semantically there is nothing that interesting going on. We have a semantically proposition which is easily composed with the counterfactual operator. But even though, and this is sort of what I have been aiming to argue for today, let me, I don't know, repeat somewhat that we started with what looked like an really weird use of an imperative. It looked like an imperative, but it appears that it does not morphosyntactically behave like an imperative. So the morphology is misleading. So we independently need to argue that some syntactic information is absent from this use of imperative, and subsequently, when the syntactic information gets interpreted on LF, we lost some of the semantic information. For example, the imperativeness of an imperative, and in the end, we are left with the imperative form being used as a I don't know, a sort of minimal clause, a simple property of, for example, worlds. But even if that is the case, even that what I have argued for today is at least somewhat true, there are two open questions, and I don't know how reasonable they are, or are they even possible to answer. Because first of all, why only Russian? Because it is not the case that Russian is the unique language where the imperative form looks so bare, so minimal, that it lacks a lot of morphology. Many Indo-European languages, English, German, if I'm not mistaken, and many others, they also have the imperative form, which is really bare, and you could argue that those imperatives are also spelled out the littlest chunks of syntactic information, with everything other that makes them imperative being silent. But why don't we observe this in our languages? The typological paper of the Grushin 2008 even argues that in her survey, she only found out that only one other language uses imperatives this way, and well, it is the language that is in direct contact with Russian. So, but I don't know whether this should even be entertained by a semanticist that tries to examine this construction, because the reasons for the fact that it is such a rare thing may be purely historical. And the other thing is that the resulting semantic system, even though I have only sketched it, and I do not want to commit myself to any particular proposals about counterfactuals and so on, the resulting answer seems almost trivial. It seems disappointingly boring. Because in the beginning, we had something that looked really interesting and weird and strange, and we have ended up with something first of all sort of boring, and second of all, with a system that crucially depends on this subjunctive feature, which well, does all the job. It just says that, wow, it is subjunctive, so it can be inserted into a counterfactual. The problem solved. I think that it is a kind of a problem for what I'm presenting today, but maybe it is not that bad. So I want to conclude. We started with a surprising construction. How does an imperative correspond to an antecedent? How did this happen? In the middle, we have stuck to morphosyntactic reasoning. While I think that a semantically oriented one was possible, you could start with the fact that it looks like an imperative, and try to somehow combine the counterfactualness and the imperativeness in such a way that the semantics would work, and somehow, although I don't know how, the morphosyntactic properties would follow. But if we start with the morphosyntactic properties, we end up with the conclusion that even though it looked surprising, it was not a true imperative. It did not have the important distributional properties associated with imperatives in Russian. And we have ended up with the with the, well, is somehow somewhat disappointing semantic system, and we have ended up with that what surprised us about the construction wasn't the case. It wasn't an imperative verbal form. Wait, sorry. There was an imperative verbal form, but there wasn't the full imperative structure, and subsequently there wasn't full all the semantic parts that are associated with imperatives in the literature, and that effectively detonated the bomb of surprise of this construction. And thank you very, very, very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you. That was a very nice talk. Let's go ahead to questions. Questions, please. We have Jan Muslicki. Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I was like wondering whether you can really say that the imperative morphology is just misleading. I mean, I've tested those constructions which are just one and the same in Polish, and I can see at least two properties that are shared with standard imperatives, and that might be problematic for the straightforward account. So first of all, just like imperatives, they do not allow that embedding. So you can't say, he said that, make one more step and I leave, for instance, right? You can't formulate that clause. And you have this effect of
I'm really sorry. Could you please repeat what you have been saying, because
yes,
my internet
you can't embed imperatives under that clauses. So you can't make that clauses from imperatives, like he said that, go away. And you have the same effect for sentences you're discussing. So you can't say, he said that, make one more step and I leave. You can't do that. So you need direct quotation. So that's one thing. So it's not ST. That's the thing. It does not look like ST, meaning standard proposition. That's one thing. Another, you have this effect of rebuke. So it's pointed out in Kaufman 2011, like one says, let's say A says, go away. And B says, hey, wait a second, you're not in a position to tell me what to do, or something like this, right? And you have, I think, the same in sentences you are discussing, like make one more step and I leave. And you can make a rebuke, hey, wait a second, you're in no position to tell me what to do. So at least to some extent, it does behave like imperatives. Of course, I fully agree that it is not 100%, but I think that, you know, taking this straightforwardly as ST might be problematic for effects. I can clearly see, at least in Polish, and I think they're common cross-linguistically.
Yeah, could you, as I have understood you, the same use of an imperative verbal form for a counterfactual as observed in Polish, I do not see in Russian how that could. The second property you were talking about, like приди он вовремя, его бы наругали, if he came in time, he would be scolded. I do not see how one could answer that with, hey, you're in no position to telling him what to do.
Well, perhaps this very sentence is odd due to, you know, pragmatic reasons, but clearly, I mean, make one more step and I leave. You can say, you can make a rebuke, hey, wait a second, you're in no position to tell me what to do. I mean, I will do yet another step and what. So
yeah, but
clearly it behaves a little bit differently than standard if sentences, right?
Yeah, I agree with your point about the embeddedness, although for me it is just strange, not truly ungrammatical. But what you have said about take like one more step and I will shoot you. I have said that these conditional conjunction constructions are different types of creatures from the counterfactuals I am talking about here. Well, another argument for that would be that the rebuttal property you were talking about, and also the linear order thing I have said. Yes, that says that it is not the same as the conditional conjunction, but what to do about embeddedness, I do not know. But at least for my Russian intuition, these embedding these counterfactuals becomes a lot more better when you put the antecedent imperative clause in the end. So я сказал, что что пришел бы вовремя, не задержи меня. I said that I would come in time if I wasn't held somewhere, and maybe the effect you're talking about is due to processing. So you just hear an imperative verbal form after that, after that, and you're like, wait a second, that's not okay.
Okay, other questions? Yes, sir.
Hello. Hi,
Hello.
thank you for this. I think this is a very interesting construction. And related to, sorry, let me lower my hand. So related to this previous question, I'm wondering if you can embed this construction under a quantifier. So in English, you can embed a well, in any language probably, you can embed a counterfactual conditional under a quantifier, like no one would be happy if they, I don't know, lived in London or whatever, right? So you can bind they with no one. So I wonder, so that's considered to be, I mean, it's not completely maybe transparent from the surface string, but at least semantically, you have the conditional under no one, right? So can you say something like никого бы не наругали, приди он вовремя? So no one, if no one would be scolded if he came in on time. And if yes, then you know that strengthens your point, right?
Yeah, I have tried to look at these, but I have found out that my intuition completely breaks in the counterparts. Okay. I think actually that not, and yeah, that appears to be a problem. And even though you can say something like you can use a plural pronoun in the example you have said, but I think that just references, I don't know, the domain of quantification.
Right, I see. But, okay, so maybe there's a puzzle.
Yeah, but can this have something to do with I don't know, this imperative counterfactual having a higher composition side, so that a negative quantifier cannot bind into it.
So yeah, if it's, well, possibly, but you might want to check positive quantifier as well, right? So like каждый, whatever. I mean, it's got to be, I guess, singular because for the reasons that you mentioned.
I actually think that with positive quantifiers it's all right. So something like каждого наругают нагрубил маме. Everyone would be scolded if they argue with their mom, it sounds fine to me.
I see. Okay. Good. All right. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? I have one observation that I would like to throw in, which is about English. I don't believe that this is at all productive in present day English, but you have this one expression, be it ever so humble, there's no place like home. It's kind of concessive, although even if it's very humble, there's no place like home. But it shares with the construction you gave that it looks like the same morphology you use for imperatives. It doesn't have at all an imperative meaning. It allows the subject to be third person it instead of a you, but it doesn't have the subjunctive and counterfactual kind of qualities that you have. So I'm wondering, how do you get the counterfactuality to come out from that? And would you have a way of undoing that so you could account for this English very narrow example? I have a question of a data question I can't answer, which is whether this is coming from a more productive historical time. That might be something worth looking into as well.
Yeah, something similar is also observed in Russian. There are Russian examples where this imperative verbal form is used with the concessive with the concessive particle хотя, something like even though, and I think that it is not necessary. It is not needed to cancel the subjunctiveness I am talking about here, because, well, at least in Russian, for these concessive context, you would still need sometimes you would still need a subjunctive particle be, but it is not that much the case, of course, in your example. And I think that it may be treated by going into more detail on what exactly this subjunctive feature is, because as I have said, it really looks like an almighty savior that comes out of nowhere to make this analysis work. And I think if a more rich notion of subjunctiveness, of subjunctive representation in syntax, I think would at least make it a bit more understandable.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Marcin Wagil. I hope I'm getting that name not too terribly bad.
Yeah, it's close enough. Thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot. So related actually to the previous point. So in Czech there's a construction that might be of interest also. Doesn't involve an imperative, but rather an infinitival form, and it can only work with beat, so to be. But it's very productive, like other than that. So an example would be, yeah, sorry for the political one. So být Putinem, okamžitě bych ukončil válku. So to be Putin, I would immediately end the war, right? So meaning if I were Putin, I would immediately end the war, right? And so what's sort of interesting here is that you don't see any spectral or tense morphology on beat, on to be, right? So this might be worth looking at, since it seems to me if what you're saying is on the right track, that you want to map not only constructions with imperatives, but any cases when you have this kind of so like morphologies is reduced to minimum, and this sort of relates to so like my, I don't know, it's like question or comment, because I'm interested in semantic change, right? So that it seems that whatever happened during the grammaticalization process, it's reasonable to assume that there needs to be something in the construction, in the imperative, that facilitated the change, right? So at the end, it would be great to have some idea about what that was. And I was thinking whether you looked at the distribution of verbs that allow for that. Is it that you can do it with every verb in Russian, or maybe there are classes of verbs that do not allow for that? And say I would suspect that you maybe can't do it with modals, or I don't know, but this might give you hints about certain properties of what you need to, it's like to begin thinking about this, becoming this construction in the first. I don't know whether it makes sense or not, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, first of all, regarding your example, who wouldn't? And about semantic change, yes, it has been reported something like that. I am definitely not the first Russian to notice this construction. And a Russian researcher, Anna Zalezniak, has said that this may be explained historically by the fact that Russian imperative form has its historical roots in if I'm not mistaken, in Indo-European optative, which definitely has had larger distribution, and which would definitely be reasonable to expect in a counterfactual. Regarding your point about classes of verbs, I didn't go through a dictionary or something, but I have looked at some definitely unrelated verbs that do not form any natural class, and the only restriction I have found so far is the lack of an imperative form. There is no way to do a model to make an imperative form out of a model in Russian. I don't know. I think in many languages that is the case, and yes, so I try to find any, I don't know, maybe a spectral constraints, but as far as I can tell, at least there are none. And regarding the point about Czech infinitives, I actually think that this construction in Russian, it is good for I don't know, some like presentation, because it looks so scandalous on the surface, but I think it actually would be the case that if we stick to this strict idea, this can have consequences for many other, I think, phenomena where root subjunctives or root infinitives and so on result in this conditional like interpretation, and there are more examples, and it is more common in world languages than having an imperative form in the antecedents. And thank you again very much for the questions.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we have time for one more quick question. Yasser, can you keep it short,
Yeah,
please?
I have a very quick remark. So during the talk, I was thinking Japanese actually has something similar in a very limited context. I think the verb has to be the verb for to do. I think that's the only one that can be in the imperative form to mean a conditional, but it's often used for unconditionals, like whatever you do, or whether or not it will rain, things like that. But I think it doesn't have a counterfactual flavor. I mean, it's very hard to tell in Japanese, I think, but yes, I wonder if that's similar, but just as a data remark.
I think that that's very interesting. And for the lack of counterfactual flavor, I'd once again invoke the properties of a Russian particle be, because it is observed in Russian unconditionals. Кого бы ты не привел, я его встречу. Whoever you take with yourself, I'll meet him or her. But yeah, it appears that things like this are more common than I have initially thought. Thank you very much. And well, thank you.
Actually, so in a non-unconditional, like it rains, do imperative in Japanese, it has like this kind of distant flavor. So maybe it is kind of factual. I don't know, but sorry, I guess we have to move on, right?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.